certainly was a very rousing and energetic start to the morning from our colleagues. I would just like to spend 1 minute talking about why I'm on stage, and then I'll introduce the rest of the panel, and they can tell you about why they're on stage and a little bit of their own history. We're not here to sell anything to you specifically, but I think it's important for context about where all of us sit in respect of our various roles. So as head of hospitality, tourism and leisure for Deloitte, one of the key things that we do, and why it's important that I'm here today, is we do a lot of advisory work on hotel development, feasibility work, business planning, concept development, valuation, etc., all related to new and existing hotel product. I'm an ex-hotelier myself, spent 13 years in the business and have spent 13 odd years doing advisory work around the hospitality and tourism sector. So I have the insight from both the operational side as well as from the financial advisory side. And that allows Deloitte to advise clients specifically on how to best take advantage of hotel development opportunities. One of the key factors in hotel functionality and successful hotel functionality is design, and getting that design component absolutely right in respect of what the context is. So catering specifically towards a target market or a variety of target markets. So I will introduce the following panel members. Let's start with Celine on my left for her to give you a minute or so of her background.
Thanks, Grant. Hi, everyone. I'm Celine. I'm currently working with Paramount Hotels and Resorts. My role is basically involved brand development, brand strategy, and project-based. So if you're not familiar with the brand, what we're doing is we're taking Paramount Pictures, the movie producer film industry, and we're bringing it to the hotel world. So our first property opens at the end of next year. And we're excited to have you guys there. In terms of my background, I'm an architect by training. I have my MBA. My experience goes into architecture, interior design. Also spent a few years in New York working with an F&B operator and owner. And I actually worked with Rotana Hotels for a little bit here. So what I hope to bring is hopefully a holistic perspective from a design background, as well as seeing the industry from different sides of the table.
Thank you. My name is Brian Johnson from Godwin Austin Johnson Architects. I first came to Dubai in 1975 when the only international hotel in town was the Intercon, which is now the Radisson. And I've seen, obviously, a huge amount of change over the years. We've been involved in a lot of hotels recently, which range on the one hand from the Royal Mirage to Babel Shams, that sort of traditional building, to much more modern hotels like Hilton Garden Inn and so on. So a whole array through every sort of 3-star, 4-star. But it's been an interesting time for me. So, you know, we're looking forward to the discussions coming up.
Good morning all. My name is Justin Wells. I'm the principal of Studio HBA. We're a part of the HBA company who has obviously done a lot of hospitality projects for our best part of half a century. My role as the principal, we are very specifically looking at a lot of mid-scale lifestyle brands of hotels, which is, you know, we see a lot of this activity in this particular market at the moment. We also have the luxury of even creating some new brands, world's first brands in this part of the world, working with some developers, coming up with the new DNA of some hotels. So it's been a very exciting time for us as well. And we've seen some of those brands starting to emerge in a wider market. I think we represent a fairly seasoned group of designers. We're obviously in very good company here as well. We know you know, the people on this panel and their capabilities very well, and obviously very much excited to be here today as well.
Thank you very much, Justin, Brian and Celine, for that introduction. I'd just like to paint a bit of a scene for you in respect of how we typically approach hotel concept development and hotel assessment. And basically it starts with looking at what's in the market already, if it's an established market. We look at what the target markets are, specifically from a nationality perspective, from a leisure versus business perspective, whether it's a resort property, whether it's a city property, and a whole variety of issues looking specifically and considering what the target market is. We then take a lot of consideration around what the client-specific vision is. Quite curiously enough, however, a lot of clients, a lot of developers and owners actually don't know what they want, and ultimately come to us to give them advice in that respect, which is always quite interesting, because when you give them something, then they say, well, no, that's not what we wanted. Well, you didn't tell us what you wanted in the first place, which is always somewhat challenging, specifically from a design perspective, and I gather it's a similar challenge from the panel's perspective. But then we also take into consideration the site and the excuse me, the location considerations and constraints. But one of the things that we typically do not necessarily look at is who the actual customer is in terms of a grouping or a segmentation. So do we look at it, whether it's targeting specifically Generation X or Generation Y or the Millennial or Generation Z, or whoever knows what the next name for the next generation might well be. Now, should we be looking at that? And that's part of the purpose of today's discussion. Value, if one looks at the way that we approach it, and Deloitte being a financial services company, we tend to look at things from a financial perspective, and that's what people pay us to do. If one looks at statistics and information around valuations, hotel valuations, a number of studies have been done that show very clearly that hotels that are very standard, that are fairly standard in terms of scale, in terms of branding, in terms of look and feel, in terms of design, typically attract higher values than hotels that are outside of those ranges of norms. So looking at the topic of the discussion, we can basically break this down into two components. One being, what do the millennials want, and are we doing enough to target those millennials and make those millennials our customer? And secondly, in terms of the design component, is there more that we can do in order to make those hotels that we are now designing with, which are to be more relevant to hotels, more deliverable in terms of being on time and on budget? As we know, in Dubai, in the region, in fact globally, on-time delivery for most construction projects is on the slide. So we are seeing 20 to 30% overruns in many, many cases in respect of on-time delivery. So with that, I'd like to launch into a couple of questions, some probing questions to the panel. And I'll start with Justin in this regard. Do you think, from your perspective, Justin, that we actually know what millennials want in respect of a hotel?
I sound like a psychologist. I don't think they also know what they want sometimes, but it's a great question. I guess we're often asked about catering to this future demand, and we have brands which are very specifically millennials focused as well. So we work with a lot of most of the big operators, and they know that that's a target market that they want to dial into better. And we have very robust dialogue with them about I guess the offerings in each hotel. They can be unique. They can be very site-specific or culturally specific as well. And we do ask a lot of probing questions about that particular group of people. I'll give you some examples. So we are developing a new brand of hotel where our client knows specifically that's their market. That's the segment they're trying to focus on. And they know they like things like, like most people, like connectivity. They need to be able to get onto Wi-Fi, be able to connect everywhere around the world. The basic stuff which even the business traveller, sees as being the essential, but most lifestyle travellers still, or leisure travellers still need some sense of connectivity. So that's a given. But we started to explore other things. So what draws the millennial traveller to a specific hotel, for instance? And we looked at a variety of things. There was the idea of an authentic and unique experience as well. There's something which, if they're connected, then they want to share their experiences globally through social media, etc. So they want to be taking the Instagram photo. They want to share it with their friends whilst they're traveling, basically sharing it real time around the world. So the hotel itself had to be memorable, had to be unique for its location. So when I say authentic, so in this part of the world, the GCC, it needed to have some sense of place. It didn't have to specifically be an Arabic design, but it needed to speak a little bit of location. So we understood that the uniqueness was important as well. And then we looked at another quick example of the other reason why they might come here. It could be event-based. It doesn't have to be the hotel as an object. The things which surround hotels, social events, things where third-party, non-guest related people might come to a hotel. If there's that sense of an intrinsic culture or an offering from that hotel, that would give them other reason to go there. That they might be mingling with other people, locals, other travellers, whatever it might be. So events, things like deck chairs, cinemas, things like that, where an outsider might come to the hotel for an event-related thing. So we looked at a couple of different strategies that started some very interesting dialogue, but it always started with the connectivity, without a doubt.
Good to know that I qualify for at least some of the attributes of a millennial. Celine, from the Paramount perspective, are the millennials your target market? I know you're pulling together a new brand, a four-star-ish brand. Is that specifically looking at targeting the millennial? What is the Paramount perspective on the millennial as a market sector?
Sure. Well, we will be launching a four-star brand called the Scene Hotels by Paramount. And I would say it's more the values that the millennials have or what they look for that we're trying to instill. So it's not necessarily that we're targeting a specific demographic, but like you mentioned, a 50-year-old businessman and a 20-year-old freelancer is both going to care about where their power is for their laptop, whether they have access to Wi-Fi, authenticity. I mean, you see that business travelers are actually using Airbnb more and more. Why is that? Well, one, availability, but two, authenticity. I mean, you're staying in an interesting space. You're staying in the heart of the city. You're meeting locals. I mean, those are things that Airbnb was able to capture at a large scale very fast. And got us hotel operators kind of scrambling to get there. So for sure, our four-star brand is really targeting, I'd say, those values. For Paramount Hotels, it's a luxury brand. Our saying is that we're from the creatives for the creatives. So a movie is made of a series of creatives, right? You have the actor, the screenwriter, the set designer, and that's how we take care of every property. As a group of creatives, we all want to be on the same line, no matter what which consultant, which stakeholder we're talking about. But the idea is that we're going to create like a special release. But it does differ. It does differ from the four-star.
Brian, how about from your business perspective? Do your clients listen when you say, actually, a millennial needs this, or it needs that, or it needs something else? Is this something that they are alive to and actually listen to?
Yes, I think so. I mean, clearly, what we've all been saying is that there's something special about a region, there's something special about Welcome to the Magic of Arabia or Welcome to the Magic of Iceland, that people are going to want to be able to celebrate that and to show, and that's how it sort of plugs in, and that probably hasn't changed. I think the idea of the millennial sort of sweep through, and I'm clearly now into Generation Z. My granddaughter's 15, so she's a Zedder. And where's she heading? And it's interesting that I think there are two or three things that are almost like happening at the same time. One is obviously the growth of technology. Today in the paper, Amazon opened their first bricks and mortar supermarket. You walk in the door, you take off the shelves, and you walk out the door. It's charged to your account. There's no checkouts. There's no nothing. You just walk out the door. Now, you can imagine in 20 years' time, you're going to be doing that in a Paramount Hotel, because we have the art of the possible, it's going to happen. So in all of these things, you've got that inevitable growth of technology, which is driving, I think, a lot of what is behind that sort of millennial sort of clique, shall we say. But on top of that, you've got then other values that are changing. We say our granddaughter is also a bit of a Victorian. You know, she's dead against people drinking and smoking, and you know, and people are, you know, changing the way that they live their lives because of expected, you know, increased duration of their lives and so on. People are obviously settling down later and so on. So there's a whole raft of things. And with two hats on, I'm an architect, and obviously we have an interior design component as well. From the architecture side, we have to design buildings that are flexible enough to do something in 50 years' time that, you know, is not necessarily what's needed now. So we have to be careful that we don't immediately go around and design, I don't know, 25 square meter rooms or circular sewage pipe rooms like has happened in Japan and places like that. But we have to be flexible enough to accommodate the changes that go on, while the life cycle of an interior, certainly in this part of the world, is sometimes, 5-7 years or something like that. So it might have 10 lives as a building before it's actually looking like the Radisson is now, which is 40 years old and being completely renovated. So I think that's what we have to be careful of as design professionals. But yes, of course, coming back to your question, you know, our clients are saying to us, what is going on in the marketplace? And we're doing this Jewel of the Creek project. You know, there are 5 hotels there, so we're able to say, okay, this one is for these, this one is for those, this is those. It's really quite an interesting experiment, as the client is actually saying to us, you know, so what can we do that's different between that one and that one? So it's an exciting time.
35, even 40-year period. And to design what people want now, is that the right way to go? Justin, how about you take that one for a start?
Question. The way I feel about this is the hotel itself can't do everything. If it's well located, if there's a value proposition there, and there's a sense of good design and experience, that's the beginning of the story. But so it's got to be well located, and I think if you were trying to future-proof, and you can't design for the now, but effectively ongoing, it has to be well catered for what's around it. You know, if I'm staying in this hotel, I need to know what's on offer. What's in my area? If I walk, you know, a kilometre in this direction, what do I see? What's around me? And I think with the devices of technology and connectivity now, I think you can do that sort of roaming on your own. I think that
in terms of, as we keep hearing, you know, sustainability is dramatically important to millennials and the younger generation. It's critically important. My daughter keeps coming to me and telling me, oh no, we need to recycle all the time, which we do, but you know, is it going to the right places? And you know, she's fanatical about that, and she's 10 years old. So it's being beaten into them, you know, in the nicest possible way at their schools that this is something that's important. And we think that the millennial is looking for sustainability. How important do we believe that it really is in terms of what the millennials want? And from your own experience, is that something that we're able to design into properties and make our clients, your clients, understand that that's important from a business perspective? We understand from a notional, we love to be green, tree-hugging perspective, but from a business point of view, ultimately, hotels are businesses. Does it make sense? Celine, would you like to start with that, and then Brian can fill in?
Well, in terms of sustainability, I do think the hotel industry lags a bit behind in terms of the awareness and what millennials and people want. For instance, a millennial applying to a job is really going to the sustainability initiatives or stance that a certain company takes is going to make an impact on that brand. And it actually might determine, yes, I want to work for this company, or no. How do they impact the world? How do they see the world? How are they helping the world? Unfortunately, I don't think it's as strong in the hotel business, but I think it's obviously getting there. For us, it's important. We team up with EarthCheck to basically work with us from the conception of a building, or as early on board as we are, to help us throughout the design process, make sure that we're building sustainably, create benchmarks for us once we're in operation, meet those benchmarks every year, challenge ourselves every year. I mean, we do have a system in place to tackle this. And I don't think it's just for show. We really believe in it. And not only that, it helps our business. If you have an energy efficient building, then your bottom line is going to increase. So why not? It's helping us. It's helping the environment. You can explain that to your guests. And what we want to do for the brand is actually bring awareness to the guests that, hey, you're using X, you're emitting X CO2 per night staying in this room if you left your card in the room.
Yes, I think that the problem that you mentioned earlier on about owner-operators is part of the dilemma now. So you have obviously got the people who own the buildings have got to buy into this the same way as the operators do. And I think if the operators stay strong and say, look, you want to have my brand, then part of my brand is my values, and part of my values is this. So particularly if you're involved in a new build project. I mean, clearly there are a number of things starting at the very beginning. Which way does the building face, where the predominance of the glazing, and so on and so on. So from an architectural perspective, there's a huge amount that we can do before you even start thinking about the servicing of the building. How do you, power the air conditioning, et cetera, all of these other factors which we can do. But on top of that, I think there's a sort of a slight cynicism, possibly, that the baby boomers, of which I think I'm the only one here, who have. So for instance, when I go to a hotel, when I first went to a hotel which said, save the